Hey, it's that time of year again, time for high school football, which means it is time for Snap, Tackle, and Pod. I am Mick Shaffer of KSHB 41. It's a rebrand. All right, KSHB 41, get it down.
Yes.
I'm still trying to get it down. It's still the same old PrepsKC. Not old. I don't know. Old. You've been around for how many years now?
This is our 12th season, our 11th year. I'm in a different spot in my basement. If that's a rebrand.
We can't really tell that, though.
No, you can't. I still got the thing. But no, I still got the backdrop, and it's a little different spot, and we did a little, painting, some flooring, so it's like a brand new thing. It's like kind of like a third of my house is all brand new.
Some new there, but he's still Dion Clisso.
Yes, I'm older.
He is old.
I am old. Yes, officially old as of about 3 weeks ago.
So yeah, what we're gonna do this night and every week leading up through December is podcasts here and talk about high school football in and around the Kansas City high school metro area. And it's starting this week, Dion. We've got Missouri, whether it's 100 degrees or not, right? We're going, huh?
Well, it's kind of funny. A few years ago, they started so early. They started practice in July, and then they ended up starting games like August 16th or something like that. And it was just brutally hot. And one coach who I won't name said he didn't want to play in it. He was just going to take the bye and start his season a week later because it's so hot. You're a week before Labor Day. That's kind of the traditional time that Missouri started for the last, 10, 15 years. They've started on Labor Day before. But you're always going to run. It seems like you always run into some hot weather. And if you don't get it in the last week of August or the first week of September, sometimes you get it in the third week of September, and it's just brutally hot then.
Yeah, and I'm glad. Once again, it's Missouri and Kansas separated by a week. Some years they've been separated by 2 weeks.
Yeah, there was 2 weeks. And that's when the Missouri thought that God had ordained that you had to play your state championship games on Thanksgiving, because God forbid the 10 basketball programs that might have a player on them would be injured. From not having their kids. And that's all I ever heard. Is like, what about basketball? It's like, well, what do you mean, the 6 month season that they have?
Yeah.
So they bumped it back a week. And I think part of it was that, there's several factors. And really the one I heard was as big as anything was the fact that the tourism industry in the state of Missouri was like kind of harping on schools for starting. That's one of the reasons why they don't start until a week before Labor Day now, because nobody would travel past about the last week of July.
Well, that's Missouri. Over in Kansas, they were starting like August 11th and 12th.
Yeah. And so the state fair, not that you'd think that would have that much play, but Branson does have play because it's a tax base for the state of Missouri. They were saying, hey, we are seeing nobody come down here because the kids are all either back in school or starting, practices and stuff like that for fall sports.
Yeah, and they want to start school earlier so they can get longer Christmas breaks. It's all kind of give and take, and the calendar changes each and every year. They just kind of fit the high school football season in it. And with that staggered Kansas-Missouri start and the fact that Kansas plays one less game in the regular season than Missouri, they both hit the playoffs at the same time. So at least we have that meeting of the playoffs at the end of October, early November here. But let's get started here. We're in August. Missouri starting up this week. Let's talk about some of the changes here, Dion. There's been some coaching changes, some Kansas guys coming over the programs, right? Like Staley and Park Hill and taking over. Yeah,
Steve Rampy leaves Lawrence and comes over to take over Staley. Phil Light retired. He's now coaching in Iowa.
I was gonna say,
he come to find out, I've known Phil for a long time. He's got family in Iowa, so for him it was a pretty good move. He's at Ottumwa, Iowa High School in Ottumwa, Iowa. Yeah. Radar O'Reilly is the biggest. Nobody who's watching this or who's playing high school football knows anything about MASH. So
I think people watching this, maybe like some of the parents.
Yes, maybe
athletes up there.
Maybe the parents are getting younger these days too. Yeah. So that's where he's at. And Steve Rampy has coached Blue Valley, he's coached Lawrence, and now he's coached Staley. Those are three pretty blue chip programs out there. He kind of turned Blue Valley into a blue chip. He went to one of the most storied, if not most storied program in Kansas. And then now he's at blue chip.
Pitt State, one of the most storied Division II programs out there in college.
He's over there. And then Andy Sims goes from Blue Valley North to Park Hill. And it's really kind of a homecoming for him. That's where he lives. His kids go there. His daughter will be in the building in a few years. And so he's excited about that. And that's it was tough for him to leave Blue Valley North. He did a lot there. 3 state championship games in 4 seasons and a state title. And at a school that people didn't think you could win at, period. End of statement. He's done a lot there. And it'll be a transition for him at Park Hill, but I'm assuming that they will be, pretty good, pretty fast. So.
Well, and in both those cases, you have established, winning, successful coaches going over to established, winning, successful programs.
Yeah, and so those are good moves for both those guys, and it's going to be fun to see. And I think that the Suburban Gold is as good as it's going to be, and the Suburban Red, where Staley is getting better every year. And so those guys are used to it. They come from the EKL and the time in the EKL, a little bit in the Sunflower for Rampy, so that it's just the same thing for them.
Well, it's funny, the Suburban Gold, that was my next question here. I mean, how good is it, and how odd is it that it's so good, and Blue Springs and Blue Springs South aren't the first two names you're mentioning?
Yeah, and I think that says a lot about the league. I mean, Rapex is the defending state champions, and I think they're going to be pretty darn good again this year. And Liberty North has been right there. They were, in a district final against Rapex the year before, in the quarterfinal last year against them. Liberty was really good. They were in the district final last year. So those teams all return a lot of people. The two teams that don't really return a ton of people as starters are Rapex and Liberty North, but they may have been the two deepest teams coming in. So Liberty's bringing a lot of people back, and Lee Summit North brings a lot of people back. Lee Summit West has got some spots that they're kind of in a little bit of flux. They had a really good season last year. Got to replace a quarterback. Got to do some things there. So and then Blue Springs, you played better football at the end of the year. They were much better than they were at the beginning. They're offensively, I don't know what they're going to have, because they've got quarterback and some offensive line stuff, but defensively they got some dudes and they can play. So they'll probably be in a lot of games. And Blue Springs South has kind of been pointing to this year for the last few years. This is the group that's juniors now, and the sophomores and the seniors. That's the group that was really good when they were freshmen and sophomores. So they're trying to make that step. And the problem is you may only win 3 games and be way better than you were when you only won 1, or you may win the same amount of games and still be as good a team. And that's why the postseason will be interesting to see how they all shake out in the brackets, because you can't take a game off in the postseason in Class 6 with the Kansas City schools.
If you survive the Suburban Gold, you might, you might be primed to win state and big class this year. That was my question. So, I mean, if you have Liberty North, Rapex, right? Lee Summit North, these could all be top 10 teams in the
I think they, and you had Rockhurst, and I think half the top 10 is going to be Kansas City teams very easily.
Right. But, and then you've got teams like Lee Summit West and Park Hill that might be just knocking on the outside of that door.
Those are teams that will be much better at the end of the season than they are at the beginning, probably. So yeah, it's definitely going to be one of those things. You look back last year, Blue Springs, the first couple of weeks of the season, they looked so bad. I didn't know if they'd win a game.
Yeah.
And they end up going 5-6 and had Liberty on the ropes. And Liberty had to go to overtime to beat them. So that's just what I'm saying. A team that at one point looked like they couldn't win a game ended up being, a breath away from a district final and playing their best football. So that's what it's going to be like in the postseason.
Yeah, absolutely. You see that a lot with teams that are replacing a lot of starters, that they're talented, but it takes a few weeks for them to get their feet under them, get them used to playing this level of high school football. Once they kind of get a win under their belt, their confidence, they're up and running. Well, speaking of Liberty and Blue Springs, that's one of your Remax Big 3 game big, and that's a big one coming right out of the gates here.
Well, and I think it's a test of the Blue Springs defense against that offense of Liberty with Wintrick Williams III. Now they're replacing a quarterback, but the Liberty's kind of quietly become like Platte County in the sense that they just put somebody in there and they find somebody every year. I mean, they've had a couple 1-year starters. They've I think 1 2-year starter in there, and they just come in and they do a great job of finding out what that kid does well and making sure that that's what they're doing. Now it also helps that they've had Wintrick Williams in there
for 10 years. Right? I did the story on
3 years.
He started 4 years.
He played
quarterback as a freshman, I guess.
Yeah.
That was the kind of angle of our story here at KSHB 41 when we previewed Liberty. Is like, it seems like he's been there 10 years. He admitted, which was like, it feels like I should have left a year ago. But no, he's back for a senior season. He's got to be one of the front runners for the Simone, does he not?
Yeah, and I was asked this morning on 810 about that, and I said Henry Martin, him, and then a guy we talked to at the end of last year, Jaden Doss. Yeah. I don't know what they're going to do with him.
Junior this year.
He's just a junior.
He won the Otis Taylor Award last year.
But we saw him line up in the backfield as a tailback at the end of the season. Now he told us both that that's not his favorite thing to do. But that you're going to see him maybe. I don't know. Maybe you will. Maybe you won't. But he's got the ability. I think he could stay healthy enough to be a 1,000-yard guy. I mean, I think he could, or he could very well have a combination of 1,500-1,800 yards receiving and rushing, I would think.
Wintrick could be at 2,000 yards.
Yeah, Wintrick was easily on his way to 2,000 plus last year, and then got nicked up there at the kind of the middle part of the season. So yeah, it's those are kind of the three guys, kind of right off the bat. There'll be some other guys who probably step up, but those are the names that are coming back.
Other Remax Big Three games of the week, and again, the Big Three is actually just going to be 3 games this week.
Yes,
right? We have just one state playing football.
Just one state playing football.
Park Hill South and Platte County. I'm intrigued by this matchup because not only are both those squads going to be good, we don't know what class they're going to be in, right?
They won't know until, depending on when you watch this, it'll either be posted on PrepsKC, or if you watch it this evening, depending on when we get this out, they won't know until that morning. Friday morning, the 27th, is when Misha is releasing.
They could both be in Class 5. One could be in Class 6, and class 4.
Yeah, I think Platte County is probably going to stay in 5, but they think they were on the line, so they don't know. I mean, they're kind of in that spot too, and I feel like Park Hill South is probably going up. They redistricted and moved, a couple hundred students over to South a couple of years ago, so that definitely changes the number. And they were pretty close last time. Staley was pretty close last time too, though I don't know if they'll make it up this year or not. So that. There could be 10, 11 Kansas City schools. If things continue on the path we are in 10 years, there could be half of Class 6 could be Kansas City schools. That's if school districts don't build new schools. Like if Park Hill doesn't build a new school, or North Kansas City or Lee Summit builds a new school. That's the one caveat that would keep the numbers back, more Class 5 teams.
Did I hear that Grain Valley could be Class 6?
No, they were just into Class 5 last year. I think they're a little ways away from Class 6.
I mean, the arrow's pointing up, and Grain Valley.
Yeah, they've been growing like crazy. I mean,
not quite that big.
I've been doing this long enough to know that they were not a very good Class 2 team.
I remember it's Class 3, not quite Class 2.
Yeah, they went to a Class 2 semifinal in 95 or 96. Then they went to Class 3, and they were pretty good in Class 3. But they kind of ran into Oak Grove and some of those teams there in Harrisonville, when Harrisonville was down in Class 3. Then they were in Class 4 for a little bit, for a few years, and then in the last year they moved to Class 5, and they won back-to-back districts. They're kind of like Platte County. They just went up to 5 and did the same thing they did the year before.
Mm-hmm. So back to Platte County, they lose Chris Runkey, who for 2 years has been one of the best quarterbacks in and around Kansas City. He's up at Northwest Missouri State, I believe now. But you're not worried about them. They're one of those schools that can just kind of find a new guy every year. Yeah,
and I think that their defense is going to be really good this year. So their shootout games may not happen this year. If they're in a shootout, they're probably in trouble. But they are going to rely on that defense a little more. They like the guy, Bill Lude said he's not the same as Chris. It's a little different skill set, but they like what he brings. But they always seem to have one waiting in the wings. And then the one year they had the kid from China Mission Northwest move over, and he won the Fontana Award. So it's they've done a pretty good job of coaching that position. They do a really good job of coaching that position. You just don't have kids step up and play if you don't.
What happened with Park Hill South last year? They came out of nowhere, 7-3, their first winning season in a long time. And they were right there with Staley, could have beaten them in the playoffs. Is that momentum there? Is that something that the Panthers can take with them to this year?
I think so. That they kind of 2 years ago, I think there was a vibe that they were getting better and they were going to make a breakthrough, and they were decimated by injuries. They like 3 weeks in had 3-4 linemen, a quarterback. I mean, just decimated. So that season kind of got totally derailed. And then last year they were healthy. And they had a pretty young group. I mean, they've got a lot of them back this year, and they really got going. And I'll tell you, that if they're in 5, they stay in 5. 5 is crowded. If they go to 6, 6 is crowded. They make whatever class they're in better, because I think that they're going to be able to compete at either level. So the defense is really good. They've got some really good talent over there. So the Rubin kid is at Clemson. It's not like they don't have some players. I mean, the Park Hill School District has some players. So
do the Missouri coaches like that overall, or maybe dislike knowing not until the morning of the first game what class they're going to be in? Because over in Kansas, 2 years out.
Yeah,
they do 2-year cycles.
It's one of those deals that where I think they'd like to know a little earlier. And in the first few years they did it, it was a week before. So you kind of had a sense. But then last year with COVID, they waited until like the third or fourth week before they released them because they had to see who was playing and that kind of stuff. And I totally understand that. And then this year, I think they kind of said, well, we want to get it out before the season, but we want to wait as late as we can. And you've had some teams like Clinton that decided not to do varsity. And I don't know if that's a case anywhere else where they've had some teams.
How big of a surprise is that? Because that's not a tiny little 8-man school or anything.
They just didn't have, they've only won like 2 games in like 5 years. And I think they just drove the numbers down to the point where they had one senior, Cole Young's got a column up on our site right now about it. One senior who was a kicker and like 6 juniors and like 25 sophomores. And for all the people who are like, that's ridiculous, you should have varsity football, it's almost criminal to send 25 sophomores out to play Odessa, Harrisonville, Warrensburg, and oh, by the way, Center, Oak Grove, Excelsior Springs, who are all going to be really good this year, bring everybody back. It's just criminal. I mean, you're going to get kids hurt at that point. And if you think they're not coming out for football now, if they get crushed and hurt when they're sophomores, they're not going to be there when they're seniors. So the best thing you could do is get your junior varsity going, get your sophomores and your freshmen, recruit as many freshmen as you can, get more sophomores out, get more juniors out, and just go that way. So yeah, you don't see it at a class 3 school that often, but it sometimes it happens.
So that's what they'll do. They'll play a JV schedule. Those juniors and that one senior aren't allowed to consolidate and get farmed out to another school.
No, I don't. That was the question somebody asked me. Could that senior go transfer somewhere? Would Misha allow them to do it? And I'd say, should they? Yeah, probably. But I mean, will they? Will they? I mean, because Clinton's down there. There's Warsaw and Warrensburg, all those places that are decently, well, I guess Warrensburg, 20 minutes away. But doing the math in my head on the drive to Branson through Clinton. And I highly recommend the Sonic in Clinton, by the way. It's a very good Sonic, by the way, in case I
stopped there a few times.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it is a big town. There's industry there and there's people there. Just right now, the interest in football is not high. Soccer has got a lot of interest, but you lose a lot of games and it's tough. It's tough to get kids out. So maybe that will get changed as they kind of get, reset a little bit.
Right. And so your last RE/MAX Big 3 game is going to be St. Michael taking on Summit Christian. And St. Michael's intriguing to me. Just a 5-5 record a year ago, but they played St. Pius to within a score last year.
Yeah.
A St. Pius team that was the best in Class 2, and they were right there with one of the best.
Yeah, they are. That's a much improved program. 5-5. Andrew Pitt's their coach this first year last year, and that's the best record they've had in 4 seasons for St. Michael. And they're going into the Crossroads Conference, so a little more stable situation. They won't be independent anymore. And they're kind of developing a rivalry with Summit Christian. This is I talked to Todd Burke at Summit Christian, and he said, the thing about it is there's a lot of kids who are looking for that type of school, and their choices between Summit Christian or St. Michael. And a lot of these kids, some of them go to church together and have gone to elementary school together. So he goes, they know each other. And they said that from his standpoint, he likes it. He thinks it's good to have a school that's close and you have a rivalry and it means something. So they really like this game. They played the first game of the season last year, and Summit Christian was pretty good and they won that. Summit Christian brings back some good people, but St. Michael brings back a ton of people too. They were both young. St. Michael was a young team. Summit Christian had some really good veterans. Grayson Sprouse, their quarterback. He talked about a guy who played 10 years in the league. That's Grayson Sprouse. I felt like he started when he was a freshman. I felt like he'd been there since my son was born 11 years ago. But no, it's they've got some different look. Summit Christian was a wide open spread team. They may run veer this year because that's what they've got. So it's going to be interesting.
Lower levels, you got to adjust to the athlete, right?
Yeah. You can't just plug in the next guy.
No, absolutely. All right. So those are your RE/MAX Big 3 games of the week. You can find those on PrepsKC.com, a write-up on all 3 of those games, but so many other big games, Dion, here in week 1. And for us at KSHB 41, our game of the week is going to be Rockhurst at Ray-Pec. And wow, that's a monster.
Yeah, that's a good one. And it'll be good to see what Ray-Pec is able to do to replace the guys that they lost. I mean, they lost a lot of good defensive players.
Everybody knows the quarterback's gone.
Yeah.
Who else
they lost some linemen on the defense, and that's going to hurt them. But the one area that Ray-Pec has been deep in since in the last 5 to 7 years, since they've been up, I mean, they've been up in 6 for 13 years, maybe 12, 13 years. But in the last 5 to 7 years, as they've kind of rebuilt that thing and got it going again, they've had linemen and they still have linemen. So they just plug them in every year. It was the skill guys that was kind of holding them back. Well, now they're getting the skill guys to go with it. And you saw them match up with the Despent in the state championship game and just dominate. And so it says a lot about how they're doing things down there that, they still have a lot of good skill guys, and then they're going to, have to replace some linemen. Rockhurst, that was a team that, man, they were playing really well at the end of the season. They've gotten healthy. And then they got COVIDed out there the first week of the playoffs. So that's a pretty hungry Rockhurst team. I talked to Coach Donahoe and, his crew with Greg Oder and Tom Cruise. They really feel like they had a full year of actually getting to know the kids. The kids had a full season. So they feel like they're a little more prepared this time than they were going into last year. So it should be a great game.
Oh, that was a 42-34.
Yeah,
shootout.
it was a shootout last year.
Game at Rockhurst. And that Rockhurst was one of those teams last year that got off to a slower start, but was building up momentum into the playoffs. And of course, what a shame that was. And it wasn't just themselves. It was Lee Summit North, Odessa, some Ottawa over on the Kansas side.
Oak Park, one of them too. Oak Park.
Yep, I think so. And they had to bang their playoffs because of a COVID case on their team. We've seen a couple cancellations already this year, but hopefully it doesn't get to the levels we saw last year.
Yeah, Ruskin.
Overall, wasn't as bad as we feared. I think, didn't we do the math over what 90% of the games?
Yeah, 90% of the games. 90% of the games got played last year, and the Kearney and Ruskin both had to cancel. Kearney was supposed to play Fort Osage, and Ruskin was supposed to play St. Joe Central. So Fort Osage is playing St. Joe Central. It was a nice little easy marriage there. What hurt them is they had kids who were in quarantine just due to exposure. Didn't get their practices in because you have to have so many practices to start the season, because that's a Keisha rule that really has evolved with the ages. They don't practice at all in the summer. So you need to make sure you get your 14 practices in before you play a game. Oh, wait, they practice 25 times a summer.
Summer long.
Summer long.
All the 7-on-7s, all the scrimmage. You get one practice in Kansas. You go on full practice a week, full team. They definitely take advantage of that. Weights, film. It seems like it goes from about May 1st through December 1st.
That's an archaic rule that needs to end. That is. And I know it's a lawyer that wrote it, because if a kid gets hurt, you can say, oh, he wasn't conditioned well enough. And it's like, well, if you didn't show up for summer, then you need 14. Yeah. But you've opened the gate with all the summer practices. So don't act like there's not, and let's not kid ourselves. Whatever the number is in Kansas versus the number in Missouri, if it's 10, there's guys doing 15. If it's 20, there's places doing 25. So you've opened the door to it. So don't act like, it's, one of those things. There have been some people who've gotten busted for it. And I'm sure that's probably because their rival didn't like it and turned them in. I mean, that's more, but Misha's not rolling around summer camps. Keisha's not rolling around summer camps, seeing how many practices you're putting in. So that's what happened to Kearney and Ruskin, but they should be back next week and that kind of thing. So,
all right, a few more games on the Missouri side, and we'll hit up Kansas briefly here before we get out of here. I think a sneaky good game on the Missouri side. North Kansas City is hosting Raytown. Raytown could be really good this year. They played a ton of sophomores and juniors last year. Those guys are juniors and seniors now this year. And the North Kansas City, again, they were 5-5, Dion, but a lot of close losses to a lot of good teams out there. They beat Platte County one time.
Yeah, and they got a lot of guys coming back too. So when you say sneaky good, I look at the schedule again, and after deciding on things, I look at that and go, man, that might have been a big 3 game right there.
Hey, you run the place.
I know, but here's the fun part about it, though. There's a good possibility those two could be in a quarterfinal game down the line, or something like that. So this may not be the first time that these two, the only time these two meet. And I think these are two teams, and I think they'll both be in 5. North Kansas City is solidly slotted in there. Raytown was down at the bottom of 5 a couple of years ago, but I think they're back up and should be there. But they're both going to be in 5, and along with, say, a Belton. Green Valley or Platte County. I think Green Valley will stay up. Platte County, I think, should stay up, but you don't know. It's a Park Hill South could be in there. You don't know with that. 5 is going to be deep. And did I haven't even mentioned Staley yet? I mean, so North Kansas City and Raytown's a great game.
Also at Lee Summit North on Friday, Lee Summit North's not playing there. It's going to be Maryville coming down to play Blair Oaks, who's coming over. It's a rematch of the Class 3 state title game, Dion.
Yes.
Right out of the gates, and they're playing at a large school in Kansas City.
Yeah, and last year they played at UCM. And I don't know if that was because they couldn't get a field because of COVID, like a high school field because of COVID. So this is the second year in a row they're playing this game. I don't know if they thought that they would start the year and they'd end up in the state championship game against each other. And, three of their last.
Yes, that's a pretty good.
Yeah.
If you're guess two teams out of Class 3, those will be your first two guesses.
Well, Odessa would like to have a say in that.
That's right. Sure, I forgot about that,
Who hasn't lost a regular season game in 3 years? But no, it's definitely a good one to watch. And Maryville's kind of on the outskirts. They're in the Midland Empire Conference, which I cover, and Matt Webb does a great job up there. So we keep track of them. And no, it's a good one. That's one of those that if you just want to watch a good high school football game, that's a good one. Now, last year, Maryville's quarterback broke his leg in the first quarter, and it was not a very good football game. But the guy who came in and played quarterback the rest of the way is back this year for Maryville. So hopefully he will not.
It was a closer game in the state championship.
Yes, it was. They get Maryville. Yeah, it was a shootout. It was like 62-40, I think. Yeah. But it got away late a little bit. But it was back and forth. Blair Oaks kind of jumped out, and then Maryville was trying to keep pace, and then did a pretty good job. And then Blair Oaks jumped out again, and so no, it's definitely a good opening season matchup. I like to see that when teams go out and play. Harrisville's playing a team from New Jersey.
Yeah, that's my next question. What do you know about Harrisville hosting Wayne Hills from Wayne, New Jersey?
They've won 4 or 5 state championships, and they like to go and travel for their first game. And they've been to like Idaho and Utah and places like that. And Harrisonville is notorious for going out and scheduling teams out of the metro to play. I mean, they've played several St. Louis teams in the past, and this is I don't know if the Wayne Hills team goes to places where there's NFL teams, but I think they were trying to set up a tour of Arrowhead for them, practice facility.
They toured KU.
They toured KU. Okay.
They were up at St. Joe on Wednesday at Missouri Western and practicing there. So they made a trip out of it.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing they do.
A varsity game on Friday.
Yeah. So no, that's what they do, and they got in touch with Harrisonville, and that's going to be a good one too. And Harrisonville's got Jace Reynolds back, another 7-year starter for Harrisonville. They're diminutive but outstanding tailback who's putting up numbers that are starting to climb the all-time numbers in the state of Missouri. He's a 200-yard plus guy every week, and so Harrisonville should be pretty good this year. And they're going to get a test and right out of the box. And sometimes and Harrisonville has run veer and things like that at times. The year they won the state championship, they got off to a rough start. Their veer wasn't very good. They went to Platte County and fumbled it like 8 times. And at the end of the year, they're beating Kearney. Yeah. So it's beating Kearney in the state championship game. So
by the way, Wayne Hills from Wayne, New Jersey. Guess what their head coach's name is? Wayne.
Well, yeah.
Right there. His name is Wayne. Quickly here, some thoughts on Kansas starting up in a week. What are you looking forward to the most there?
Excited to see Blue Valley North under Adam Pamel. Their OC took over for them when Andy Sims left. I'm curious to see if Mill Valley can just plug and play. Bishop Miege in a very unfamiliar spot of not rolling in with a state title. St. James win the state title.
Daring not to win a state title.
Yes. Bouncing back from that semifinal loss. The poor people there. But no, St. James is a team that could be just as good. I mean, they lose some good players, but they've got some good players back. And then, in 6A, we talk about Mill Valley, Gardner Anderson, Jesse Owens over there used to be at Olathe East, and he takes over that for Ryan Cornelson, who took a job in Southern Missouri. It's going to be interesting because I think Free State's going to be a little better than they've been.
Be better than last year. They
weren't very good. They weren't very good last year. That's going to be a test. And then in 5A, Mill Valley, Aquinas, DeSoto, there's Spring Hill's been pretty good. That's a team that's in 5A that you don't think about being in 5A. Lansing is going to be pretty good. So yeah, I think it's, Aquinas may be not the dominant team they've been. Mill Valley's been the dominant team the last few years, but they're not I don't think they have, there's a little bit of a step back here. It's that week. I know there's a big kid on the D line who's had to overcome poor parenting to have a career
to raise. Yeah.
He's a large human. There's no doubt about that.
He should have been graduated already too.
Yes. I was going to say, yeah, he's been starting for 3 years too. So no, it's going to be interesting to see how things, you lose a Tank Young, there's a lot of names that we've known for a while that are gone on the Kansas side. So it's going to be like interesting, Olathe North, I think will be pretty good. That may be the top team to start. Olathe West should be decent. So there's some, the question is in the Shawnee Mission School, Shawnee Mission Northwest has kind of been the top dog the last few years. Who's going to kind of take that? If it's not Shawnee Mission Northwest, who's going to be the best one out of them too? So lots of questions in the Shawnee Mission Schools.
Awesome. And we will answer those later because
Yes.
we are out of time for today. Dion, thanks so much.
It's always fun.
Thanks you for watching or listening. We'll see you next time right here on Snap Tackle Pod.